In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I got a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Meg Gowell. She's heading over from the folks over at Appcues, definitely a known brand to a lot of you guys out there, specifically if you've been, trying to basically make product adoption easy within your products. So today we got Maggie on the show, and curious to learn more about Appcues and her perspective on growth. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So maybe give us a quick overview in your perspective. What is Appcues all about for the few guys out there that haven't maybe heard about it?
Yeah, so we're a product experience platform that basically allows anybody who's technical or non-technical to create really personalized, beautiful experiences to their end users right within their product. So the value of Appcues is that, as a marketer like me who's not particularly technical, I could create an onboarding sequence or a feature, announcement right in my product without having to get a developer involved. And it's super easy. It's going to look just like it was created within my product, be completely on brand, and I don't even have to worry about it.
Yep, makes a whole lot of sense. Now, what type of products benefit the most? Like what, if I'm listening in, if I'm maybe a product marketing manager, or even a product manager, like what, for what types of products does Appcues suit and fit really well?
Yeah, so we basically our focus is on a SaaS product. So you have to have a product to install Appcues on top of. So we're not going to work on just a regular website. You have to have an actual product or an app. Our main focus is B2B SaaS, although we do have some B2C customers. They're just not quite as many. I think really our sweet spot is in that B2B area.
Mm-hmm.
And we really help folks who are kind of maybe transitioning from more of a sales-led motion to more of a product-led motion. So if you're trying to become more product-led, you're trying to kind of reach your users in product rather than speak to them via email or via a person, that's where Appcues can really kind of help you grow on that side of things.
Makes absolute sense. Now, how do people learn about Appcues? Like what's sort of the key client acquisition channels that you guys are looking into?
Yeah, so Appcues from the very beginning has had an incredible investment in content. So we have a huge blog. We got a bunch of content people who are creating a ton of content all around being product led, all around user onboarding, all of these kind of, hot button topics that relate to what we do. We also have the Product Adoption Academy, which kind of teaches folks how to do user onboarding well. You can get certifications for it. You can add badges to your LinkedIn profile, all those things. So there's been an incredible focus on that organic kind of thought leadership side of marketing. From the beginning, which is great as somebody coming in on the advertising side, because a lot of times that's the hardest thing to get, right? It takes a really long time. There are no shortcuts to being great at that. And we're starting now to kind of expand on the advertising side to complement what we have on the organic side. So right now, a lot of people do find us via our blog or via the Product Adoption Academy, and we're starting to increase the number of people who find us via paid acquisition, as well as some outbound work from our sales team too. That's kind of getting started too.
That makes sense. Now, how do you sort of, as a director of growth marketing, and you came in, a couple of months ago as well, what's your take on the website? Like, how do you think about the website? What role does it play in their journey to get started with Appcues?
Yeah, I think our website has to basically support a ton of the customer journey. Basically, until you get into our trial, you're going to be on our website. Like you're going to start on the blog, or maybe you'll start on one of our other websites. We also have a couple websites that aren't appcues.com. So we have productled.org. We have a couple other more thought leadership ones. So it's really kind of a wide range of digital channels that you might start on. So you might be on the blog first, and then maybe you're learning about use cases on other pages on the website. So I think it's very important for us to understand on any given page, where is somebody in that kind of buyer journey? Mm-hmm. What do they need to know? What information do they need to know at this moment? And what is the next step to conversion? So this is stuff we're working on right now of, given where they are, given what they're reading, what's the next natural step for them? Like, should they go into the trial next? Should they ask for a demo next? Do they need more information on pricing? Do they need to better understand for their specific use case what to do? Or do they need more information at this point on ROI of buying the product? So I think that there's a ton of different touch points there. And for us, it's something that we're still working on and figuring out where do we need to kind of funnel every given person and help them kind of move along to learn about our product.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Now, specifically going into that, what you just mentioned, supporting that journey. What do you think? What have you found to be, maybe technologies, approaches, methods, ways of thinking, messaging that actually supports that journey? I mean, not just with Appcues. I mean, you've been in interesting marketing roles prior. What's something that you've picked up over the years that is actually quite helpful when trying to support the journey towards conversion?
Yeah, so you mentioned my background has been a little bit more in B2C than B2B, so I'm learning a lot in this role. And I think that the number one thing that I've learned in my past and that I'm trying to bring now to Appcues, we have a very technical product in a lot of ways, right? Like product adoption, user onboarding. These are kind of like jargony terms in some ways, right? If you know about them, you're like, oh yeah, I know what that is, but plenty of people don't. And so part of it for us is how do we figure out how to speak to each given person based on where they are, right? Maybe you haven't learned what user onboarding is yet. How do I explain to you the value of Appcues if you don't know the phrase user onboarding, right? So part of it is figuring out how do we think about our language and speak in a way that resonates with people and relates to like what their pain point is and what their issue is. Maybe their issue is just I'm getting a lot of people in a free trial and they're never buying, right? How do I say that in a few words without saying, hey, do you want a product adoption platform? So I think part of it is figuring out how to make our language simple and yet specific enough that we get the right people in the door, and then tailor our language to where they are kind of across the journey. And so that's something we've been working on a lot as a team is how do we not be too jargony and yet also jargony enough that we explain to people what they need to know.
Makes a lot of sense. Very, very good. So we talked a bit about what you guys are doing on a high level. We talked about sort of approximately the channels that you're working on and a bit about the journey on the website. I would love to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about yourself, right, as a marketer. What I'm curious first is there's so much content out there for marketers, right? You could read all day long. Like, where do you personally find high quality information that you actually feel, push you further in becoming an even better marketer?
Yeah, I think it's really tough. I also happen to have two small children, so my amount of time to like consume things outside of work is very limited. I probably don't do as much of it as I should. One thing that I've been really into recently has been this podcast called the CMO Podcast, and it's run by Jim Stengel, who was the former, global marketing officer at Procter & Gamble. And he gets in kind of CMOs at all kinds of different big brands. And it's great for me, I think, listening to that in part because I can do it in little chunks when I'm in the car taking the kids places, but also it helps me get out of the weeds and not be too narrow in, oh, this is this one kind of like B2B function that people are doing, and kind of get out of that a little bit and think about, okay, as a whole, how are big brands connecting with their customers? What are the things that big brands are focusing on? How do you foster creativity, right? Like big questions rather than getting too focused on more detaily things. And I think that what I'm working on that I've always struggled with is it's really easy to, fight whatever the current fire drill is. It's really easy to be like, oh, this little thing needs to be done today. And then you stack up all those little things and you never keep your focus on like a bigger strategic goal. And so I think that the podcast has really been helping me think about, okay, what are the bigger strategic goals I need to think about? And how do I make sure that everything I'm doing on any given day is focused on a bigger goal rather than just what seems like the most important thing in this moment?
Makes a lot of sense. To wrap it up, I got some rapid fire questions for you to get to know you a bit better. Are you ready for those?
Yes, hopefully.
What's the last book that you read?
Okay, well, I haven't finished it, but I'm in the middle of reading Crossing the Chasm, which talks about kind of, disruptive products and how you get folks to, adopt them and buy into it. And I think that is kind of a little bit of what Appcues is we do a lot of education about the value of what our product allows you to do. And so I think it's very, very topical and interesting to think about how do you combine education with selling in a way.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, what's the one thing that you would fix for your role as a growth marketer?
I just want better data. It's all I care about these days. Is just, I think that they're really valuable changes being made by platforms to not track people as much. And I understand the value of privacy completely. But I think from my perspective, it's often hard. It feels like there's so many different data sources, even internally, and it's hard to get them to connect. It's hard to make sure that you have a really good understanding of what your customers want, how they're coming to you, right? How many touch points does it take? We're working on a big project right now to kind of improve attribution. And part of that, from my perspective, is like you can do so many things in marketing, and sometimes it's really, really hard to understand what's really working and what's not. And so, yeah, if I could do anything, I would just make it easier to know exactly what was working and what wasn't.
That makes sense. For the very last question, right? If we would do a bit of time travel and go back to Georgetown University, you're heading out of formal education into the world of, business and growth and in your path. What's the one advice that you would give yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I started right out of school in actually the luxury wedding industry, and then kind of moved into digital advertising. So I've had a rather interesting career path. Um, I guess the one piece of advice that I would give myself is maybe just to ask more questions and to keep learning as much as I can. I think I tend to try to figure out things on my own. And I think being more confident, asking more questions, not being worried about looking dumb would still even serve me well, but it would have served me even better when I was younger.
Very good. Meg, I really appreciate you took the time with us today to be a guest on Pathmark Presents. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Appcues today, what's the one thing that people should remember?
I think if you're trying to move from a sales-led motion to more of a product-led growth strategy, then Appcues is a great way to help empower your marketing and product management teams to do so.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathmark Presents.
Awesome. Thank you.